All right, so to start, I'm doing a video review for the two movies that we watched in class. The 1973 film, Gotcha and Hess, that was directed by Bill Gunn, and the 1971 Sweetback's Badass Song, directed by Melvin Van Peebles. While watching both movies, I found a lot that were in common between both of them. Um, the first thing that stood out is obviously the two main characters in each movie are African American males, um, which is important at this time because uh, African Americans in the past weren't getting the proper cinema roles or exposure, and if they were being made fun of or being exploited. Um, so I found that the very first thing that's prominent in both films. Um, Next, in Ganja and Hess, I noticed that Hess is very successful, which is also different from the narrative that Hollywood has portrayed African American males in the past. Um, and in Sweetback's Badass Song, he's not rich, but he's talented at his craft, and it explores like a hippie culture and all that deal. So there are two different movies, but two uh, relatively successful African American males in both movies. Um, Also, a reason why both males are successful with women. And Sweetback's Badass Song, obviously his trait is that he can please these women in this position, and that he's running from the cops after killing one of the cops, and all these different stops. He like proves it over and over again, and um, in Ganji and Hess, it seems that each time before one of them makes a kill that they are seducing the other person before they eat their or take their blood. Um, Another thing I noticed is that the soundtracks for both movies they would go to back to the same song in each one. In Ganja and Hess, each time they were about to take blood from someone, like the same song would continue to play. And in uh, Sweetback's Badass Song, whenever he was on the run from the cops, the same song would play. And really, in that movie, I feel like there wasn't really too many other songs that played, or even in Ganjan House, there wasn't too much music that played, but there would be like moments where they would play the same track, and like it let you know like what what's going on at that time just by the sound. Um, Also, following along with the sound is that I realize in both movies there's not a lot of dialogue and conversation points between main characters. And Sweetback's Badass Song, he doesn't really have much like a ton of dialogue. I remember the one point where it was after he killed the cop, and he finds this group, and this woman's the leader, and everyone thinks that they're going to do this competition, and uh, all of a sudden he says, "No, we're gonna fuck," which is um, was a funny part of the movie. But just like whenever he speaks, like you have to listen to it because you don't get much of it. Same thing with Ganji and Hess. He didn't really talk much, or any of the characters for that matter. But when you did, you had to listen to make sure that you knew what was going on. I remember in Ganji and Hess in the beginning of the movie, his buddy was talking about committing suicide, and later on, it's important because obviously he tries to stab Hess and then eventually does end up committing suicide. And the later on in the movie, Ganja is talking about some snowball fight as a kid, and um, they're both very important stories to the movie. But if you're not paying attention, then you'll miss it, and uh, some of the stuff won't make sense. Um, Outside of some of those things, I noticed that for a lot of the movies in general this semester, and including these two, um, the low budget movies seem to not have like a lot of lighting, especially at nighttime. Even with Night of the Living Dead, it's pretty difficult to try to see what's actually going on. All you have is like little splotches of light where you can try to determine what's going on or by the sound. Um, Malinoche was another one that was really, really dark. You had to kind of picture what was going on in your head while you were doing it. Um, all right, so some other things that I noticed or some more similarities between both movies were especially in uh, the Sweetback movie was a lot of the color, especially if he was on the run. The camera angles would be like all around him in 360, and there would be a bunch of color shooting down. In Ganja and Hess, whenever they would be drinking blood, that soundtrack, and there would be just different like things going on the screen. So I feel like both of those were kind of the same. Um, like a little bit like I talked about before. Hess was an anthropologist and very wealthy, and he was kind of like high society, and as opposed to Sweetpack, who was kind of part of the hippie culture, and whether he was uh, doing work in that part of the area, was probably doing okay with money, but obviously just not wealthy as Hess in that movie. But drawing off that point, I think both were very intelligent. Hess because of the fact that he was an anthropologist, and um, Sweetback because at the end of the movie, throughout the movie, he's able to uh, to flee the cops and dodge the cops and get away with killing some of the cops justly because they murdered African Americans unjustly, but um, he's also able to trick the cops at the very end to get away by switching clothing with the other man. And so it just shows you that both characters, although at different points of social status, both still very intelligent. Um, Another thing I noticed is at the end of the movie, um, Hess actually dies, and Sweetback gets away. Like I just said, he switches clothes with the random person walking through the desert, and the cops track that person instead of Sweetback. But Hess stands in front of the cross and ultimately kills himself. Which, if I want to make a case for maybe Hess isn't even as intelligent as Sweetback, you can maybe make that case because of the ending, or maybe something that I haven't really thought about is that Hess wanted to die, and I think also that was interesting at the end of that movie was the man that Ganja had seduced and then took his blood. At the very end of the movie, like comes uh, running out of the water like butt naked, and she's just got this creepy like grin on her face. And finally, some obvious things that are the same. Both movie directors are African American males as well, which is obvious because that's what unit we're on. Um, the year each movie was made, they were only made 2 years apart. So, I mean, the technology is relatively the same. So you don't have to kind of change your perspective based on one movie had better technology and producing equipment than the other. Um, but all in all, I think those are some of the things that I took away from both movies, and those are the things that I saw that trended with each other or were similar in each case. I liked both movies. I thought um, Ganja and Hess was more traditional movie style than Sweet Sweetback, just because the limited dialogue and the fact there's a ton of music and the hippie culture that I don't think a lot of us were exposed to. So that was a little different. But I still like the movie, but and then we watched Night of the Living Dead last time, which I thought was maybe one of the best movies we watched yet, which has another African American male who has like a leading role and is kind of the hero of the story, and unfortunately gets caught up in the mess at the end and dies. But so yeah, that's my review on both the movies. And until next time, thank you.